Dear friends, dear participants, good morning, good evening, or good night, as we know we have participants from all around the world with us here today. My name is Raksha Mahtani. I live in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, and I am a member of the coordinating committee of this beautiful and inspiring event. Warm and loving greetings to all of you, and welcome to session 6 of this ISSE-SE Education in Human Values Program online program course 1. I will be your facilitator for today's session, and I am very much looking forward to spending the next couple of hours together. As you know, in our previous sessions, we have already deepened our understanding on the philosophy of ISSE-SE Educare. We have also covered and deepened our understanding on the universal values of love, truth, righteousness, and peace just 2 weeks ago. Today, session 6 is dedicated to the value of non-violence. Before introducing you to our speaker today, I would just like to remind all participants to keep our microphones muted at all times and our cameras off as well, just to ensure the smooth ongoing of this beautiful online event today. So we will have a time, like we always do at the end, for a short question and answer session 2. So we would like to ask you, like always, if any question comes to you, to take note of it, and you can write it down in the chat box at the end of the presentation. Please also remember that this session is being recorded, and you will be able to find the presentation of all the sessions in our YouTube channel, which we always facilitate the link to you in our emails. So it is a wonderful opportunity to go through the presentations again and dive deeper within the content and everything that has been shared. So after saying all of this, as I said, I'm sure we're going to have a beautiful moment together, like we always do every 2 weeks, deepening our understanding of our own selves. And today, diving into the value of non-violence, I would like to introduce you now to our speaker, the first speaker for today. Esther Puentes was born in Colombia, South America, and from her origin, she derives the joy of living and the interest in the wisdom awakened in her contact with indigenous sages. She graduated from a French school inspired by the from a French school where she learned the importance of logic and structure. Deeply inspired by the profound teachings of her spiritual master, ISSE-SE, who lived in India, and supported by the American pragmatism of her studies, she has benefited from a mixture of cultures, skills, and knowledge. She studied psychology at the Universidad Católica de Colombia and obtained a diploma in business management at the Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá. Esther Cris graduated as a Vedic Master of the Chopra Center University in San Diego, California, and is an executive mentor and certified coach of the International Coach Federation in the USA. Esther Cris has more than 30 years of experience as a trainer of executives and their teams with clients of multinational companies from more than 15 countries all over the world. She's an expert on collective intelligence and is the co-author of the book Co-Development to Grow Thanks to Collectivity that was published both in Spanish and French. She has written articles, documents, and made videos introducing human values within various organizations. She created the Circle of Presidents, a space aimed to expand awareness in top-level executives based on developing their way of interacting. Human values and spirituality have inspired Esther Cris and her work with managers throughout her professional and career. Esther Cris is one of the founding members of the Institute of Satisai Education and Human Values of Colombia that emerged in 1989. And she has given training seminars and lectures in different countries of Latin America, providing support as well to other ISSE-SE. She is now part of the coordinating team of the first online course 1 in English of the Institute of Satisai Education here in South Europe. Her mission is to enrich life in organizations. Her joy is to accompany the development processes of people. Her goal is to awaken them to a more comprehensive awareness in which professional work is both effective and enjoyable. She considers herself to be a global citizen and lives part of the year in Europe, whilst the other part in Colombia. It is now my absolute honor to welcome our dearest and sweetest Esther Cris and to enjoy listening to her practical knowledge based on her understanding and her own experiences on the value of non-violence. Dear Esther Cris, please go ahead. Our pleasure.
Thank you, dear Raksha, for this beautiful presentation and introduction to our session of today. This is my pleasure to share it with all of you, and I hope you will all enjoy. So let me see if this is working well. So now I have to join that. So we are here together to talk about this value of nonviolence. That is the last one that we will present you, but this is not the least one, because this value, as you will see during the presentation, is also very important for all the program that we have on human values. Let's see, first of all, the etymology of this word. Its origin. So the word ahimsa is derived from Sanskrit root hims, meaning to strike. Himsa is injury or harm, while ahimsa, the A prefix, its opposite, is non-harming or non-violence. And let's see what the creator of the program says to us about the definition of this value. He says, nonviolence means not only refraining from harming others and ourselves, of course, but also taking action to alleviate suffering of ourselves and others. And I chose many sages to talk about this value because during the history, many of them teaches us great dimensions about nonviolence. The first one I chose is Moses, because part of the 10 Commandments are related to this value of nonviolence. And as you will see, all the values will be interacting, because here we can think that refraining from harm, that is the first part of the definition, is related with righteous conduct. So let's see those commandments. Because I was so surprised to know that, or to be aware that most of the commandments, at least 5 or 6 of them, are related to nonviolence. And the first of these is do not kill, then do not bear false witness nor lie, do not steal, do not covet others' goods, do not commit impure acts or entertain impure thoughts or desires. But he was not the only one who has talked to us about nonviolence. This is why I chose Buddha, because as I told you, Buddha was searching during his whole life on how to suppress or eliminate suffering in human beings. And he says, nonviolence is the first duty. This is what he discovers. And I also chose Patanjali because he was a sage that structured a self-knowledge program in 8 steps. And the first one of them is yamas. Yamas in Sanskrit means restrain or advice. And the first one of these, guess what it is? The starting point is non-violence. This is how Patanjali began with his teachings, with non-violence. It's the first step of the first yamas. On the other hand, we can also remember the teachings from Jesus. And St. Paul says, repay no evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. Do not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Even if you are violated, do not overcome evil by evil, but overcome evil with good. We cannot speak about nonviolence without remembering the teachings of Gandhi. And here I chose some quotations that are related with other of the values we already shared with you. The first one is truth is the most fundamental aspect of nonviolence. Do you remember when George spoke about truth? He asked, who am I? When you know who you are, you cannot be violent because you also will know who the other is. And then when we know both who we are, only love can remain between us. This is why in the following quotation, Gandhi says, violence means love because when you have love, or if you have love towards somebody and you respect that person, then you are not going to do any harm to that person. So as you see, nonviolence is a very rich value. Coming back to the definition of Satya Sai, in the part of taking action to alleviate suffering, he says, love in understanding is nonviolence. But when I heard that quotation that also Raksha states during her presentation on love, I was asking myself, what do we have to understand? What do we have to really understand, not to be violent? And Satya Sai says, understanding of unity of creation leads us to a general attitude and conduct of nonviolence. Animals, minerals, plants, human beings, we are all interconnected. Everything is interconnected. And I found it the same thing, the same idea, in a quotation from the Gospel of Mary. She says, every nature, every model form, every creature exists in and with each other. And she's holding in her hand an egg as a symbol of that seed, of that unique conscience everywhere. Isn't that amazing? Well, because everything is also interdependent. Here is an example of taking action to alleviate suffering. And I chose I chose a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita for All, wrote by Jack Holly. He has investigated many of the Bhagavad Gita's versions, and with the help of many scholars, he wrote this book for Westerners to make it easy for us to understand this wonderful book. And this quotation says, "All creatures, so they may seem separate, are truly one." Remember Mary Magdalene with this egg in her hand, from the same consciousness. All beings emanate from the higher consciousness and are united in it. And I also have another example of that, because this woman is amazing. If you see, she's not making any difference between feeding her own baby and this little baby of a monkey. She doesn't make difference. She's conscient. She's aware. But one day, I was to attend a meeting, a ceremony in this monastery very close to my home. And in the way, I encountered a woman. And when I approached her, I saw that she was bended in the road. And I saw that it was Caroline, my neighbor. Since she has a very severe problem in her eyes, I asked her if I could help. And she answered me, "Oh, no. I'm constructing a kind of bridge to save these ants. They are in the middle of the road. If not, we can kill them." But remember, she has a very severe ill in her eyes. But she stopped there. She also wanted to go to the same ceremony, but she stopped to take care of the ants. I will forever remind that moment in my life with her, because she passed away like half and a year ago, and she teaches me how to be non-violent in every moment of the day. So let me share with you this metaphor and begin by the foundation, by the roots, because when we are anchored in the truth, we know who we are. And from that knowing, we are straight like a trunk, and we behave with righteousness. And when we are able to behave in that way, how do we feel? We really feel in peace, as the leaves of this tree can symbolize. Permanently immersed in peace, we can, of course, spread unconditional love like the flowers of this tree. But maybe you can ask yourselves, and what about nonviolence? Well, this is the natural consequence of being really incarnating those values. Awakening to nonviolence are the fruits of the tree, because nonviolence is the art of being aware. Nonviolence is a natural result of our maturity. So I was wondering about that maturity, about that being aware of the unity amongst that diversity. So I wonder what stops us in this process of maturity. And I found that quotation that I took also from the Bhagavad Gita for All. And this book is a conversation between Arjuna, that represents all of us as human beings, with Krishna, that represents our higher consciousness. And he says there, you are at a critical moment. This self-centered indulgence with yourself fills me with shame. It is not a conduct worthy of you. And he says that in the moment when Arjuna was so confused and he was asking for help. And this is the first part of the answer of Krishna, self-centered indulgence. But then he says, you are supposed to live a life based on truth, a life in accordance with Dharma, right conduct. But your mind is confused, and you would not recognize the truth, even if you had it in front of you and it hit you hard on the head. And I said, oh my God, it's incredible. Self-centered indulgence, mind confused. Those are very special tips to understand nonviolence. So I was in search for examples on nonviolence, and I went to that monastery I talked to you about to look for a book on examples on nonviolence, and I encountered Gonzar Rinpoche and asked him about a book on nonviolence, and he told me, yes, you can read on this book on selfishness. And I said, no, dear Rinpoche, I really need something on nonviolence. And he told me, okay, you have to read it. So I took the book, and when I opened it, I found that quotation. Our compassion, our love, and our kindness are limited or partial by our self-disposition with respect to the other. Remember what Krishna says to Arjuna? Self-centered indulgence. And here, selfish disposition. Oh, all of a sudden I understood. Of course, this has to be with nonviolence. It's so clear now. And I discovered that selfish disposition is related to making distance, to separate, to cut, to not to unite. Because when we consider friends, those who are nice and friendly to us, we generate attachment. When we consider enemies, those who are unpleasant to us or criticize us, we generate aversion. And when we consider distant, which are neither positive nor negative for me, this little ego, self-centered indulgence, okay? I generate indifference. And those three, attachment, aversion, and indifference, are all part of our ignorance. This is why Satya Sai says, when asking him, where does violence come from? He says, the mind with aversion and attachment considers virtues the 6 main enemies of man: lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, envy. But the worst is that these 6 vices can poison the entire existence of a person. And I have an example that I can share you on one of these 6 enemies, because we can have lots of examples from all of those ones, but I will share with you this one. More or less 12 years ago, a big company in Europe decided to create a strategy to make feel discomfort in their employees. And they planned an evil strategy. It was so hard and so evil that there were 57 suicides inside this organization. So the company was investigated. The aim of that strategy was to save money because the company that didn't like to have to pay severances to people. So they prefer the people to quit the company. And this is why they planned such a bad strategy. But they didn't imagine how it could end. So the company was tried, and on the 20th of December of 2019, the responsibles of that strategy, I mean, the president and two other of the executives that worked with him at the time, were imprisoned, and the company had to pay a huge amount. They received a fine for moral harassment. But even if they have to pay that, imagine how can you give money to a family that has this terrible loss of a dear one because of a suicide caused by this evil strategy. And what happens? The only thing that happens there was that they were confused. Their mind were confused. Their minds were out of connection from their higher self. This is why Swami says very often, Satyasai says, watch our words. Take care of the way we are using our words. Our words can cause very deep damage. Actions. Take care and watch our actions. Because violent actions can forever harm people. But especially watch our thoughts. Because our thoughts can only cause harm to others. Even the energy of a thought can damage the persons. Watch our character and be aligned between the head, the heart, and the hands. And finally, watch our heart, because there is our true self. So let's begin by the thoughts, because we have to ask ourselves, how can we refrain from harming? Non-violence is the art of being aware, remember. But take care, first of all, of our thoughts. Because if we think evil, we are going to say evil words. And for sure, we are going to have bad actions, evil actions. This is why the founder of the program, Satyasai, says, think good. And he's beginning at the thoughts, because everything we create, everything, first of all, was a thought. Even a pencil, even whatever you have. Everything begins by the thoughts. So think good, speak good, do good, be good. Now I want to share with you this quotation that advises us about what do we have to do with these thoughts and where they come from. Thich Nhat Hanh says, the careful observation of what we desire and consume is a fundamental practice, because what we bring every day in our body and mind can also be feeding our violence, our fear, and our attachment. So I will share with you this diagram that Dr. Art Om Jumsai, the founder of the ISSE of Thailand, and also the founder of the Satyasai school there, has shared with us. And he says, the first thing you have to take care is about your senses, because your five senses will nourish your conscious mind. And the role of this conscious mind is to receive and process everything that enters through the senses. And immediately it will be stored in the subconscious mind, because the role of this subconscious mind is to store, to memorize. But the difficulty we have is that if we are not aware of what we are entering through our senses, well, we will store there whatever, and then we will behave without being aware or careful. So this is the level of the lower mind. And we use this once and again. And as Deepak Chopra says, 95% of our thoughts of today are the same thoughts that we had yesterday, because we are not being careful about what is entering to our perception. But this is not the only part we have. We have another part that is more conscious. And this is this part of the superconscious mind. This is the abode of the five human values. And its role is to intuit. Intuiting is the role of that part of the mind. But the problem is that we cannot connect with that part of our self unless we are able to pause and silence. So pause and silence are like the keys that enable us to enter to that higher domain of ourselves. In the moment we do that, all the information that is there calms down and eliminate all what we do with this lower mind. So, in order to have a tool, a mind that is really well used, we have to be aware and we have to be careful. And we can all do that every day, in every moment. You have to conquer your mind with your own higher mind. This was a photograph I took from my daughter Natalia when we were in Lisbon in the botanical garden, at the botanical garden. That day we were making a pose, and she sat there and she all of a sudden began to meditate. She was so silent that when you are close to someone that is silent, you immediately enter into the same state. So I took a photo in that moment because she really was giving me an example of how we can be connected in any moment of the life, not just when we meditate during the morning or in the afternoon. Just as a weapon can only be stopped and destroyed by any other powerful weapon, you must soothe the mind with the help of your own higher mind. Abandon forever all forms of mental agitation. Stay at peace with yourself, like a tree that has been freed forever from the discomfort of monkeys jumping on its branches. So we can conquer our lower mind with the power of the connection through silence and pause with our higher self. So I found that the best expression of nonviolence is this quotation from Satya Sai. Love all, serve all, help ever, hurt never. Because this quotation has both parts of the definition, we remember, the first part has to do with refraining from doing harm, refraining from harming is the first one. But the second one is alleviate suffering. How? Love and serve. Love all and serve all. Those are the best expressions of nonviolence. Maybe you can ask yourself, how can we behave in that way in the daily life? Well, there are practical aspects of nonviolence. There are lots of them. Tolerance, understanding, compassion or caring, service, patience, etc. But I will tell you an example about forgiveness. It is very difficult to practice sometimes an aspect of nonviolence when we felt violated by someone. And this is why I will share with you a living example of nonviolence. And this is the case of Immaculée Ilibigiza. She is a woman from Rwanda, and she was coming back to her home to celebrate Easter when she was studying out of her country, and that day was the 6th of April 1994. That day the president of Rwanda was killed, and immediately a terrible Holocaust began in Rwanda. More than 1 million of people were killed at that moment. And Immaculée Ilibigiza has to hide herself in a little bathroom with other 6 women to avoid the killers. And it was a tremendous moment in her life because she realized that in that little bathroom, she was so afraid and so vulnerable. She passes through all those inner enemies. She was full in rage. She was afraid, so afraid. But she has the possibility to connect with her own heart. She went deep inside herself. And the best she has done there is that at the end of the 91 days she spent in that little bathroom with those women, she was able to, even if she discovered that all her dear ones, her mother was dead, her father was killed, everybody in her family was dead, and also her friends, everybody. She was alone. But in that deep connection inside herself, something was revealed to her. And she said, I think deep in my heart that every human being is good. Imagine that, coming out of this bathroom and knowing that everybody that you loved was killed, but has the possibility to forgive them and to say something like that. For me, she is an example of nonviolence. She really teaches me how the heart of a human being can be transformed when we are able to connect with ourselves. So, she was really awakened. She really was the embodiment of those human values. When I listened to her in the lectures she gave and she is giving all around the world, I really noticed that she really incarnates that nonviolence is the art of being aware. She could discover that even in this diversity of people that may appear separate, even evil or bad persons, there is something that is equal and the same. She was able to see that unity, that sacred place inside of the hearts of those persons that killed her relatives. She is mature. So this is an example of nonviolence. When somebody is doing something that is very, very bad, maybe this is the moment when that people need the most to be loved. And this is why when I was preparing this conference, I was thinking about Marshall Rosenberg, who told me about nonviolent communication. And nonviolent communication for him was like the way of thinking the best of the heart of everyone. And he uses a song that I love a lot. This song is this one. Imagine that you can sing that song to someone that is behaving in a way that is really bad for you, that is hurting you, that you are trying to see them beautiful, everybody that is you in harm. So when I'm singing that, please contact with that person that maybe feels you so bad, but remember that when I deserve to be loved, when I behave in the bad way. I need the most your love. See me beautiful is that. Please try to see me beautiful even if I'm behaving bad. And this is the song. See me beautiful, look for the best in me. That's what I really am, and all I want to be. It may take some time, it may be hard to find, but see me beautiful. See me beautiful each and every day. Could you take a chance? Could you find a way to see me shining through in everything I do and see me beautiful? And this is what Immaculée Ilibi-Giza was able to do. This is the way of sharing nonviolence. This is a living example of nonviolence. So let me end this conference by showing you what happens to her. She transformed her heart, and instead of being immersed in those 6 main enemies, she was able to express truth and love and peace and righteousness and non-violence. And this heart that was so terribly hard was able to show his beauty. She was able to express the values because she was able to go inside. And instead of going through those violent and sad parts of her own being, she was able to express the best of all, her beauty. And this is for me non-violence.
Dear Esther, Chris, thank you so much for such a precious presentation. I took notes of some of the things that personally resonated in my heart very much. You showed us that nonviolence is the art of being aware. And through this awareness, we can then become more careful. And as Satya Sai says, we can watch our words, our actions, thoughts, character, and heart. And you clearly described that it is only through the experience of oneness and unity that one can truly experience non-violence. So as long as we have a feeling of separation, this is where violence emerges from this distance, from this separation. So thank you for reminding us about that and the importance of pausing, of connecting with our higher self, our conscience, our super conscious mind, as you shared with us today as well. And also the two aspects of non-violence, not just refraining from causing harm, but also alleviating others' suffering as much as we can through loving all and serving all. And actually, while you were speaking, especially with this beautiful example of the lady you shared, I remembered a quotation from Nelson Mandela that has to do with this violence that sometimes stems from within, that have to do with our thoughts and negative emotions. And it says, as I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I
Yes.
would still be in prison. So thank you so much through this majestic, finger puppet show as well, showing us the art of transforming all this negativity into this beauty that we can bring out from within to make these precious gems shine. So our heartfelt gratitude, Esther Cris, and now we have a moment. We have around 10 minutes to dedicate to a question and answer session. So if there's anyone who would like to share a question that may have come to you during the presentation, you can write it now in the chat box and I will happily read it for Esther Cris to respond to. And while the questions are coming in, Esther Cris, I just want to read a few inspiring comments also in the chat box, gratitude comments basically. So you have lots of people saying how beautiful the presentation was, how sweet it was, for the beautiful song as well, that it really touched them too, the importance of alleviating suffering, and thanking you for your love and dedication. So heartfelt gratitude from our participants, Esther Cris. And while we just wait a little for the questions to come in, people are still thanking you for your inspiration and this uplifting session together. So one thing that I would like to maybe ask you, Esther, Cris, until more questions come through. I wanted to ask you, maybe could you tell us a little bit about what you think the role of the mind is in connection with violence and non-violence? So what is the role of our mind? Thank you.
Thank you, Raksha, and thank you for the little briefing you made of the presentation. It was amazing. Thank you. And also for your comments. And well, coming to your question, you remember when I show you the diagram that Arton Junsai shared us? Well, it has the three parts of the mind, and two of them compose the lower mind. So the role of this mind, the conscious mind, whose role is to receive and to perceive everything and to process that information, will be related to nonviolence if you are careful with the kind of information that is entering through your senses. So it's very important to be careful on the use of the five senses. This is the first part. So you have to be careful and aware of what kind of things I am looking, I am eating, I am touching, etc. I'm listening, because all the senses will nourish your mind, your conscious mind. And this is not the end there, because when this information reaches the conscious mind, immediately it goes deep to the subconscious mind. And the role of this part of the mind is to memorize. So everything is stored there. And when we are going to behave in any moment in the life, uh, what is happening is that we immediately take something that we have there stored already, and we respond automatically. So if we are taking care of what is entering our senses, so we have more chances to behave and take out of us the best part of us. But remember, this is only the lower part of the mind. The best we can do as humans is to be complete. And to be a complete human being means that you not have only to act and to proceed in the daily life by according to that lower mind, but you can, because you have the birthright to connect to that higher conscience, because you are pure, you are brilliant, you are light. But you don't know that if you are not connected with your higher consciousness. So, in order to be able to connect with the intuition that is the role of this higher mind, you have to pause and silence. This is the importance of meditation for the mind, because we are training the mind in that elementary level to be able to connect immediately with the higher conscience. But we cannot learn to swim during a storm. We have to be prepared before. If not, we are not going to be able to swim well during the storm. So when we are facing difficult moments or challenging moments during our lives, and if we are not training our mind, well, we will have difficulties to connect to our higher conscience. There are sages like Thich Nhat Hanh, this Buddhist monk that is very special. He says that it takes us only 20 seconds to connect through our breathing to our higher consciousness. So imagine if we train our mind by meditating each day, by breathing mindfulness, we can be connected every time we need to. This is the role of the mind. So it begins by the senses, but it continues with this connection with the higher consciousness.
Thank you, Esther. Cris. It was very clearly explained by you. And I've actually received a question from a participant who has written a private message. And this participant asks me to convey my gratitude, their gratitude towards you, and also follows with this question, which is very related to what we're talking about now. And the question is, how can I discriminate what my senses are perceiving? So how can I discriminate what my senses are perceiving?
I mean that maybe we can say that we have to be very attentive to the beauty of what is entering our senses. We will anyway be facing difficult moments, and even if we don't want, sometimes there are things that enter through our senses that is not very good. But in that precise moment, what is very important is to remember everything comes from the same source. So behind that information. There is something more. Go beyond what you are perceiving, and go to the essence of everything, because there is no possibility of having a manifestation of anything that doesn't come from consciousness. At the end, what we have to do is we have to use our discernment, our higher intellect, to be able to see beyond what we perceive. This is why sages like Patanjali told us to do something that they call pratyahara. It's going inside, go away of the senses. So there is an information that is inside us that is more precious and is permanent. That is important, Raksha, because there is an information that comes and goes, that is not permanent. Everything is impermanent. Even everything that we can see or perceive through the senses is impermanent. But when we go inside us, we really connect with that infinite part of ourselves that is not shaking, is not changing. So even if you see something that is not good, go beyond that. Go beyond. Be sure. If not, you will not be able to see beautiful.
Thank you, Esther, Chris. Very inspiring. We have two more questions that I have received through private chat. One of them says, if I were suddenly confronted and cornered by a murderer who wants to kill me, and I have no option to run away, how should I react? So again, if I were suddenly confronted and cornered by a murderer who wants to kill me, and I have no option to run away, how shall I react?
My gosh, it's difficult. I mean, it will depend on the part of your conscience with whom you are connected at that moment. It depends on you. Because I remember a story of Alexander the Great that arrived to India, and he encountered there a person that was meditating, and this person was freezing according to his beliefs. Maybe Alexander believed that he was in a very horrible situation, so he gave him something to cover his body. But the man has, oh no, I don't know, I didn't need that. And he sent that the thing that Alexander gave him to cover his body. And he was offended. And he was almost near to kill him. But this man says, you can kill me if you want. I will never die. You cannot kill myself. And I think that this person was in a very high level of conscience. So if I am in that connection at that moment, I will tell that murderer, you can kill my body, you will not kill me. But if I'm not connected, I will be afraid and I will be trembling. So it depends. It depends on how connected or not we are. I think that maybe the best way to know is if we are feeling suffering, for sure we are disconnected. So beginning by myself, I have a long way to to do, because sometimes I feel emotions. I'm a human being, but I'm trying to connect myself at the best I can. Each time I can, I do that. And sometimes I believe that I can be in inner peace, even in front of difficult moments. Like now in Colombia, there are many things that are happening in my dear country that I cannot explain you. I can understand the suffering, but I can understand that there is something beyond that. And I can connect with my love and with my prayers to every person there and all around the world when they are suffering.
Thank you, Esther, Chris, for those wise words as well. I know we're a bit ahead of time, but I would like to read the last question as well, and then we can have a break after this. So another question I received through the private chat says, how can we be non-violent? So for example, screaming, but still be strict and promote discipline with our teenage children? As a parent, how do I bring up and correct my child without trespassing towards violence?
That is a challenge for all of us that are in the role of parents or grandparents. I think that the most important thing is not to be like rigid in our way of interpreting the situation. The first thing I will suggest you is to try to understand and to feel how the other part is feeling. What are their needs? I think that if we are disconnected from the real need that the other person is having, we cannot love that person, because when criticizers arrived, we blocked our capacity to love. And without love, we cannot be good teachers or parents. We cannot guide very well because we are upset at that moment. We are confused. We get confused. So please connect, first of all, to the need of that person and try to understand what is the need of that person, and then try to negotiate or to understand. Because I think that this is a very important thing. And maybe the other one is something that you also told you during your presentation, and this is, you can only assure that you have to give a good example. This is the best way to teach. Be an example. That's the best thing. And never violate your kids or your dear ones or anybody, because giving that example will touch their hearts. Once you have touched the heart of another person, the communication is fluent. You will connect with them. But you have to begin with yourself. Don't try to have only the reason. Prefer to have always the heart.
Thank you, Esther, Chris, for reminding us of this, the importance of this heart-to-heart relationship. I know there are a few more comments and maybe a question too, but what we will do is we always can also use our email account to get back to any unanswered question. And again, thank you so much, Esther, Chris. It was an absolute joy to listen to you, and we have more beautiful things coming up after the break, dear participants. So we will have a 5-minute break, so we will come back now again together at 11:14 Central European Time. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you all again in 5 minutes. Thank you.